Bonsoir, je suis Mirko Zardini, directeur du CCA, et c'est pour moi un grand plaisir de vous accueillir CCA pour cette nouvelle exposition ce soir. I would also like to offer a short explanation of why this exhibition, and especially why this exhibition today. The 21st century has witnessed growing skepticism of mainstream media and journalism, but also of the merits of higher education. For example, doctorate programs are criticized for training students too narrowly, for ignoring the necessity of professional skill sets and collaborative interdisciplinary ways of working. There is a 2009 article of the New York Times that described the graduate education as the Detroit of higher learning, a product for which there is no market. Alongside a chorus of other voices, the headline of the article demanded an end to the university as we know it. So today we are part of a moment of big change in education and a crisis of the old model. In her article titled, "What Are We Doing Here?", Marilyn Robinson wrote of the pressure on the universities to change fundamentally, to equip our young to be brain workers. They are to be skilled laborers in the new economy, intellectually nimble enough to meet its needs, which we know will change constantly and unpredictably. At the same time, new models like massive open online courses and other distance learning platforms are tools that also operate inside this model, producing skilled workers for a growing knowledge economy in a precarious political and economical context. Contrary to what is beginning to appear today, the mandate of the university is not to build a knowledge economy for which knowledge and learning become commodities for private good, but instead the use of knowledge for the public good. So, again, why this exhibition today? This present moment is an opportunity to question and reflect on other histories of learning. Well, there is some time that we prepare for him. At the 70s in particular, offer another example of upheaval and transition in society and a moment of backward-looking critique. The history of the Open University is a case that represents an incredible transformation in the mandate of higher education, promoting an idea of education open to everybody and experimented with new tools of communication and engagement. And I would like to refer to something that you will see also in the exhibition. Jeffrey Crotter, first Chancellor of the Open University from 1969 and 72, he declared on July 23rd, 1969, at the first meeting of the Congregation of the Open University. I'm quoting now, "We are open in many ways, but first of all to people, and the university will be disembodied and airborne. From start, it will flow all over United Kingdom. We are open as to methods. And again, every new form of human communication will be examined to see how it can be used to raise and broaden the level of human understanding. There is no restriction on technique. And finally, we are open, finally, to ideas." So we hope that this exhibition will provoke a reconsideration of this experience from the recent past and offer a critical perspective to understand what is happening today in education, while also reassessing the values at the very base of our knowledge society. With that, I will introduce some of those who played an important role in the conception and production of this exhibition and the forthcoming book. Elizabeth McKellar is Professor of Architecture and Design History at the Open University, where her research has focused on British architecture and culture and architecture and design historiography of the late 19th and 20th century. Tim Benton is Professor Emeritus of Art History at the Open University and was the course team chair of A305, History of Architecture and Design, 1890 to 1939, the first Open University course on the history of architecture and case studies for this exhibition. Finally, Joaquim Moreno, who is the curator of the exhibition and assistant professor at Columbia University, Mignon University, and Automa University. I would like to thank each of you, and I would like to have a special thank to Francesco Garutti, Curator of Contemporary Architecture at CCA, and the team, including Something Fantastic and Apparat, who drove this project to its conclusion. And now, over to Elizabeth McKellar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that kind welcome, and good evening, everyone. Can I start by saying how pleased I am to be here, and on behalf of the Open University, how delighted we are to be collaborating with the CCA on this important exhibition about our course A305 and the broadcasting of modern architecture. I'd like to congratulate all the team at the CCA for putting on such a splendid display, and I've been really knocked out by seeing it today. In 2015, we celebrated 40 years since the launch of the course in 1975 with a conference at the OU entitled Looking Back, Looking Forward. And we've already heard that this is really the theme of these talks tonight and the theme of the exhibition. I've been asked to particularly focus on the OU today. However, in doing that, and thinking about what's changed since 1975, I also want to reflect on what stayed the same, because the two are very closely related. Now, as we've already heard, the Open University was founded in 1969 with the aim of being open to people, places, methods, and ideas. And that has remained our mission statement to this day. The idea was to establish a radically new and socially progressive form of university, which would provide part-time education to those who could not access it otherwise through flexible distance learning. Since it began in 1969, the OU has taught more than 1.8 million students and has almost 170,000 current students. In its early days, when less than 5% of the British population attended higher education, it largely served second chancers who had missed out previously, particularly women, and those in employment wishing to study part-time. Today, when nearly 50% of the UK population goes on to higher education, we retain our radical mission in supporting those who do not have the usual university entrance requirements and disadvantaged groups, such as part-time students with disabilities, 1/3 of whom in the UK study with the OU. And of course, the growth of online courses has been a real boon for many disabled students who are unable to leave their homes. Over time, the OU has become increasingly internationally focused, to the point now where we have more than 15,000 students overseas, including in pioneering development programs such as TESA, which helps educate and provide resources to untrained teachers in sub-Saharan Africa. So, in a nutshell, that's the people and the places from the mission statement. We are open to all, and we operate globally. But what about the second part, the methods and ideas, which is what the exhibition is principally about? Harold Wilson, the founder of the OU and the British Prime Minister at the time, called it the University of the Air. The idea was to democratise, and indeed one might say disrupt, conventional higher education through the medium of radio and television. So for many years, in a collaboration with the BBC, OU programmes were broadcast in dedicated slots, often late in the evening, to both OU students and the wider public. With the advent of video and increasing pressure on public sector budgets, that model was eventually abandoned and replaced by in-house production of OU sound and vision, distributed directly to students as part of their course materials, along with the other essential pedagogic elements of anthologies, teaching guides, and textbooks, all of which you'll see in the exhibition. Over time, the latter, the textbooks, evolved into lavishly illustrated co-publications for a long while in conjunction with Yale University Press, which have become as well known around the world as the pioneering media elements of the OU's teaching. The integral partnership with the BBC evolved into the model we have today, in which we co-produce and contribute associated materials to around 35 primetime series a year. Current ones include Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, Inside Science, and currently now just beginning in the UK, the wonderful second series of Blue Planet with David Attenborough. In the art history department, within which architectural history sits, we've recently been involved in the remaking of Kenneth Clark's Civilization, which will be airing next year in a multi-presenter format as Civilizations. And I think that change from the single male Western perspective to a more inclusive global presentation exemplifies the shifts that have been made in OU thinking and ideas, to return to the mission statement, over the intervening years. To give one more example, we've just launched a new course, A344, on art and its global histories, in which it's quite instructive to compare my own treatment of Monticello, in which race features prominently, with that by my esteemed colleague Tim Benton on the same topic in the 1970s, to track shifts in scholarship and curriculum. This new course does include books co-published with Manchester University Press in this instance, but sadly we suspect these will be the last in the line of such publications, so that they too in time will become collector's items, just as the A305 materials are today. And you'll find more about teaching of architecture and design history at the OU today in the leaflet, which I think and hope you've been given on the way in. And what of the methods then, which are the principal subject of the exhibition? Well, we've progressed through many phases of technological transformation since the 1960s, to the point where the OU's current aspiration is to replace the University of the Air with the University of the Cloud. Our aim is to be a world leader in developing technology to increase access to education on a global scale. We have a vast open content portfolio across a variety of online formats, the most important of which is called Open Learn, which was one of the largest free online learning portals in the world. In 2006, it topped the MOOC Lab's Worldwide Provider League, ahead of MIT, Harvard, Berkeley, and Yale. It hosts over 900 courses, or MOOCs, and has been accessed by over 45 million people. Now, MOOCs, massive open online content courses, are free taster courses for the public and not part of the degree structure. But we also make extensive use of digital technology in our degree curriculum. For example, our new art history MA, which launched a few years ago, is taught entirely online, and all the supporting materials, including books, are supplied electronically. But this is where we need to reflect once again on what has stayed the same in the face of these huge technological shifts. The OU has always offered supported distance learning, with an individual tutor for each student who provides detailed written feedback on their work and through opportunities for group tuition. Ever since I joined the OU in 2005, there's been a huge amount of work done on how to translate that model to online teaching and learning. And slowly, we've evolved good pedagogical practices suitable for the new digital age, but in line with our principles. And this is what distinguishes us from the more commercial operations in the distance education market. The current debate is how that personalised tuition will translate from our current model of a closed VLE, virtual learning environment space, to a more open cloud one, in which the student is far freer to pick and choose. This is all part of a wider shift internationally, of course, to consumer-oriented higher education, which we've also touched on already, in which the flexibility of the online environment creates great opportunities, but also presents us with great challenges. The OU believes it can play a critical role in meeting such future socioeconomic challenges. For example, the rapid rise in automation of jobs, by providing the ability for employers and employees to enable people to upskill and reskill throughout their lives. I'll just finish with some words from our recent speech by our Vice-Chancellor, Peter Horrocks, who was previously director of the BBC World Service, in which he lays out his vision for maintaining our radical legacy in the future. As we approach our 50th year, I believe that the OU can have the most positive educational impact of any organisation in the world. We can develop the next generation of digital learners, workers and leaders. We can demonstrate that digital can be a force for good in a world that feels more uncertain than ever. Thank you very much.
Bonsoir, je suis très content d'être de retour au CCA où je retiens de très beaux souvenirs, mais je regrette que je continuerai en anglais. I must start by thanking Phyllis Lambert, Mirko Zardini and the whole staff of the CCA for putting on this extraordinary exhibition. Gratitude also mixed with incomprehension for Joachim's fanatical engagement with the subject. Above all, I want to compliment the team of brilliant young designers and architects for presenting this work of archaeology to a modern public. I too was young, 30 years old, when the course was launched, and now as a walking document of some sort or an archaeological shard, I approach the event with some bewilderment. This is an ambitious show. It aims not only to tell a historical story, but to draw from it a series of lessons for the present, histoire opératoire. It requires an effort of historical imagination to understand the world of Harold Wilson's Britain, with its dreams, its contradictions, and disappointments. It requires also a period eye and a period ear, I think you have to say, to see and listen to the teaching voice of 40 years ago, not to talk about hairstyles and sartorial elegance. A305 belonged to the sadly short-lived golden age of the Open University, when significant investment was put into supporting the goal of the University of the Second Chance and the ideal of lifelong learning. As Elizabeth has explained, the ideals are still there, but the funding has enormously shifted. Both have long since been betrayed by successive governments more anxious to reduce national debt than invest in its population. Education is dangerous, or it should be. It can disrupt families, upset governments, and test loyalties. And Open University courses have done all those things. Partly because the Open University courses reach deeper into the population than most courses within closed universities. A305 was only one of many OU courses, long since dead, but it's highly appropriate that the mummy should be unwrapped here in the sanctuary of architectural research and dissemination. The course had a more or less modernist narrative, albeit I would argue, considerably better researched than most histories of architecture of the day. And it was produced in the dying embers of modernism. This is after the collapse of Ronan Point and the substantial beginning of postmodernism in Britain. It had a more or less traditional methodology, that of Banham's Theory and Design in the First Machine Age, one of the set books of the course, but delivered by revolutionary means to an expanded public. It was produced when the BBC still believed in its mission to educate as well as inform and entertain, and is prepared to give prime time to the programs. A very few years after A305 came off air, the Open University transmissions were moved into nighttime viewing for video recording and insomniacs. Over 8 years, A305 taught 2,500 students, more or less, to read architectural plans, to look at buildings and ask questions. The course was produced by a course team that included an editor, an educational technologist and a staff tutor whose cumulative role was to stop us being professorial and to put the student first. We were taught the aim is not to teach, but to empower learning, and especially deep learning. That is, not only or principally to transmit knowledge, but rather to develop skills. Not telling people what to think about the Villa Savoie, but giving them questions to ask about it, including what sort of a house might this be like to live in. This was a course that begins with a house designed by a course team author and ends with an exploration of the housing question in the legacy left in the 70s by the modernism of the interwar period. We were always very aware that the students had their own views about modern architecture, the tutors too. It may seem paradoxical, but OU courses are in some ways more discursive as student experience than many conventional universities. As we said in the final radio program, don't be afraid to put yourself at the center of your revision for the exam. What in the course most interested you or changed the way you think about architecture? That, I think, is the question every teacher should ask. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. I'd just like to start with one big note of thank you very much to this wonderful institution. I mean, demanding institutions I have seen, but generous and intelligent institutions, especially willing to share their intelligence, you know, with this project, they are rare, and I'm very grateful that a wonderful team, you know, share their intelligence and their effort to make this thing happen. So thank you very much. It was, I think, the challenge. I mean, why to make an exhibition about television? Huh? It sounds a really bad question, you know? Doomed to failure. But I've been trying to ask my students the question, but do you have a television? Oh no, we don't. Do we watch television? No, we don't. No? So this was an exhibition about a lost media environment. We consume television, but we don't watch it. It's no longer live. It's no longer an agent of social synchronization. No? And the exhibition was the opportunity to sort of excavate, to do an archaeology of this media situation, and to work it two ways. One, that you could experience, see what was playing on television, and that you could also see all the requirements, all the machine to produce this dematerialized education. That was the reason. Try to make an immersive experience, to communicate these. What is the way to recover, to get a sense of this lost media environment? I think the medium of the exhibition, as challenging as is to do an exhibition on television, might be. I think it was a great opportunity to think about exhibitions. By all means, they are a way that we architects and we architecture historians think and share. And the exhibition was, I think the question is the same. We all try to expand the contact surface between architecture and society. To make that front where there is friction between architecture and the world as big as we can. The medium of the exhibition is a wonderful opportunity to communicate. So that was my 3 cents. Comment est-ce que je fais ça? Pardon-moi d'essayer de parler français. J'imagine l'exposition, il y a une introduction où on peut lire la mission, la voix des protagonistes de l'invention de la Université ouverte. Et d'après, pour poursuivre cette but de communiquer ça, on essayait de mettre en section centrale qui ont la pensée comme ce que tout le monde pouvait voir, ceux qui étaient à la télé et au dehors, au-delà, la machine, la logistique, l'histoire, la pédagogie, l'interaction. Ça, c'était un peu la structure. Ça, c'est un débat incroyable que j'avais avec Tim. On peut s'intéresser bien aux 2500 étudiants qui ont fait le cours. Mais je m'intéresse aussi aux 50 000 personnes qui ont vu ces programmes. Ça, c'est un investissement culturel. Ça, c'est un projet politique qui est important de faire voir. C'est pour ça que nous avons essayé de mettre ce corps central, ce que tout le monde pouvait voir, et expliquer un peu, rendre visible la plus grande opération logistique de la Poste en Angleterre du temps. On garde l'opération, ça, et il travaille pour Amazon, qu'est-ce qu'il fait, non? Ils sont beaucoup mieux qu'Amazon. Ils avaient ouvert pour faire toute la logistique, pas mal. Alors, ces deux mondes, dématérialiser la transmission de la connaissance, demander les usines. Et c'est ça, j'aime bien le bilinguisme de l'exposition. J'ai essayé d'écrire en anglais « Factory of the Air », et je m'ai trouvé avec la traduction française « l'usine des ondes ». Merci bien. Si on peut dire la même chose de toute façon aussi différent, je crois que c'est très, très important. Et ça, c'est un peu la façon de voir. Une préparation, le partager, parce que l'université était ouverte parce qu'elle partageait la connaissance, partageait l'infrastructure de la BBC, partager l'infrastructure de la Poste, partager l'audience. Et ça, c'est la difficulté. Partager, c'est vraiment difficile. Ça, c'est un peu la leçon. Et au dehors de ça, on voit l'histoire orale un peu et la machine, raconter un peu ce qu'elle a fait possible. The oral histories were, for me, was a sort of mise en abîme that became a project in itself. It's one of those moments where institutional generosity and intelligence is a lot of, wind on your sail, no? from the beginning of the project, there was the idea of pursuing a sort of oral history project. Oral history was very important at the time. It was the time when people's history, bottom-up history, history workshops were very important ways of empowering other constituencies, of doing history in a different way. And even the simple notion that the Open University was actually recording. There is a section of the exhibition called The Course Was Listening, because they were using their infrastructure to record the voices of English modernity. And we still can listen to Pevsner, to Lubetkin, to Hitchcock, to Summerson, to Rainer Banham through this particular course. So just keep going with it. But then, well, if we're doing oral histories, let's make them really an important part of the exhibition. Let's film them. And wait. Now there is a crew. Now you need to think it through. No? Now it's for real. So how you do it? You just go and ask questions and record talking heads as if you didn't knew that the Open University didn't like to can lectures. It didn't like to show talking heads, that thought that students needed objects, and object lessons. So how you put their knowledge to some in a productive way. So what we try to do is to stage that, to collect objects, to start conversations. And that's a little bit. And in the moment that you have a set of objects, you discover that they can be sequenced in a very different way. They can be read in a very different way. And you can film that divergence. That's a little bit what I think I learn, and that is a little bit in the exhibition. How you learn through objects, and how you record this experience and share it. I think I was just keeping the ball rolling, and using that knowledge to keep it rolling. It became a project within a project. I think it will be an important part of that other building, of the online presence of the CCA. It will also be a shared resource with the Open University for their own oral history project. So I think it gained a life on itself, when suddenly every component of the exhibition has to, produce its own justification, which would only make better the total sum of the parts. Il nous permet de ne pas oublier la distance. Plus qu'une explication, plus que penser qu'il est courant, il demande que pour faire l'histoire, on reconnaisse la distance, les 40 ans qui ont passé. J'ai essayé pour étudier ça, j'ai pensé que la meilleure façon d'étudier, c'était de réécrire le cours. Alors j'ai essayé de lundi à 6 heures avec mes étudiants à Lisbonne. Pardon-moi, mais on prend le cours de l'Université au Vert. Et j'ai fait ma responsabilité d'expliquer la distance, de voir comme l'histoire avait changé, la façon de dire quelles sont les choses qui étaient courantes et quelles sont les choses qui ont changé. Alors, c'est en capsule du temps très, très utile. Certaines des œuvres ont disparu. On peut encore voyager. On peut encore écouter la voix. On peut encore garder les dessins qui sont difficiles à trouver. On peut partager toute cette information, mais il demande de ne s'oublier pas que l'histoire change quand on le touche. Le passé est toujours différent. Et ça, c'est un blocage important. On ne peut pas s'oublier de ça. Alors, l'actualité. C'est l'actualité de poser la question, pas l'actualité de dire il était courant. Hein? C'est vraiment étrange de penser que tu peux partager le rythme des médias et rester au dehors des médias, rester courant et de ton temps, c'est un peu étrange. Hein? Ça, c'est si tu es à la télé, tu es remplacé, non, par le rythme de la télé. C'est ça que j'imagine que c'est un peu la leçon que j'ai prise de ce cours-là. I don't recall. I mean, we can. When the course was exhibited in Venice, it was exhibited in the Venice Biennale in 1976 in the context of a rethinking of the relations between the Biennale and the university because, well, Italian architecture schools were becoming a mass problem, no? And a mass question. We're talking about architecture schools with 20,000 students, no? Mass attendance, you know. I mean, I assume that Mirko I remember that even in the 90s to be with 400 students, no? Waiting for 3 days just to take an exam without sleeping. And that was, it was an incredible conversation, I guess, in Venice that was staged. Use mass media to solve mass attendance. It was an impossible equation, but it was one of these moments that I can recall, not a similar, but a project of mass education. No? Why should we accept that? Why should we answer the questions we don't like? I mean, how would we go back and collect our checks at the end of the month if we accept that the era of progressive mass education is over? What the heck are we doing? How we make for life? No? So I think everything changes. The way you speak to your students will be different tomorrow than it, than is today. But I'm not. I keep insisting the fascination. What changes when you speak to everybody? Forcing yourself. I mean, it's frightening. I remember my kind of fright. Just thinking that. I mean, I'm fairly comfortable, starting my own private revolution in my classroom. Huh? We all kind of did that. But to do that in public access media, one of the great debates was, academic freedom is good as long as you can broadcast it. That was the big conflict. When you have, speak to everybody instead of just speak to your constituency. Can you imagine how progressive that crazy idea can be? That you decide that you are, sharing knowledge and instead of just speaking in jargon, speaking a ciphered, codified language, how much the contact surface between architecture and society would expand if we did that. And I think that's one of the reasons where I don't particularly think the progressive mass education, is alive every time we try to keep it alive. We try to reinvent ourselves. Six. Did I pass my exam? Am I? Those are not for grade, but I'm taking more questions.
So if you'll help us to continue the examination of Joaquim, just lift your hand and the microphone will find you. We're very patient. The wine is not ready yet, so.
Montreal had an experiment in mass education prior to your founding the university in 1967 when we hosted Expo 67. The philosophy behind it was to teach everybody about the world, its art, its culture. It wasn't a commercially focused exhibition like all the other ones in North America. And I think it actually was a forerunner of your university.
But can I agree with you, or?
Yeah, well, be my
Okay.
guest.
Okay.
51 million people came and saw it.
Yeah.
You can't get more mass than that.
No, I guess the world's fairs are still part, yes, of that a strange version of the old Illuminist project of emancipation. Huh? This was also part of that, of telling people that they should think with their own head. Huh? And it still rings. I'm still remembering Kant answering to the newspaper, going to the trouble of answering the question of the newspaper, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is use your own head. No? And that is a strange thing. We don't think that we still are in that. How you square a universal exhibition with this particular project? It's sharing knowledge, or is making it emancipatory? That's the problem of exhibitions. Exhibitions, sometimes they are more inviting, sometimes they are more passive. And one of the incredible things of education is that we should learn to learn. It doesn't work if we are passive, if we just watch things. And that is, of course, the shifting ground of doing an exhibition about learning. Thank you.
How can anyone remain passive after that?
Wow. Well, I invite...
Can I ask you a question? I know you're about to invite us to go, but was there anyone you wanted to do an oral history with very, very much that you couldn't?
There were a lot of very important contributors to A305 that, for unfortunate reasons, were, I think, a bit too fragile to be, submitted to this process. And I would really, especially someone that I knew, Charlotte Benton, that was a fundamental part of the research of this course, and she was not, I think, in great condition to endure this. But I do regret that I couldn't interview more people. Yes. And Geoffrey Baker and other intervening people in the course. Yes. There are always, someone that you missed. But you are abusing your questions. And well, can I invite everybody to visit the galleries and explore the exhibition? And et de nous rejoindre pour un verre, hein, à la Maison Chenesy. Merci, bonne soirée. Merci bien.